Hello, welcome back to another episode of Let's Rant About. Now today on Let's Rant About, we're going to do a rant, and this is also going to tie into a video I've wanted to do for a while, but I just haven't figured out how exactly I want to do it. And it's going to be a rant about a particular company, and it's not necessarily directed at the practices of said company, but it's kind of directed in all different ways, but it revolves around the company of Gamestop. Let's rant about Gamestop. Now, Gamestop, as you know, they're in the news all the time, man. Like they can't keep themselves out of the news, and they do some really shitty things. Now, full disclosure, before we start with this video, I worked for Gamestop for about 4 years. I worked from Gamestop from 2013 until last month. So I was at GameStop for 4 years, and I was in a management position, and I saw both sides of the argument on both sides of the counter. So I get it. GameStop isn't the best place to buy games right now. It is not the best place to buy games anymore, unfortunately. And there's just so many better deals out there. You have Amazon and Best Buy who are both kicking GameStop's ass right now. And it's just, you see the company dwindling more and more each day. They keep making incredibly shitty decisions as a business that sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. You know, a couple years ago, they tried to get into cell phone businesses. I can't remember off the top of my head, and you can post in the comments below. I cannot, if you worked at GameStop, you currently work at GameStop. But when I first started in 2013, they were trying to do the cell phone thing, and now currently they have a partnership with Cricket, which is one of the most stupid, backwards, and half-assed partnerships I've ever seen any company do. It makes no sense. And there were times over the course of my 4 years where I was expected to try and shoehorn into a conversation with a gamer. Hey, do you want to talk about Cricket? You want to talk about getting a burner phone? What? Why would I do that? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So from a business standpoint, that was a poor decision on GameStop's part. Some of the other things we could talk about, and I could make a 6-hour video about GameStop if I really wanted to, but I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, but it probably will end up being a longer video, so I'll warn you ahead of time. Talk about other big blunders of GameStop while I was there. Now, obviously, we can talk about the Circle of Life fiasco, and I will give you my side of the Circle of Life. Now, and again, we're ranting about GameStop here. If you've gone into GameStop in the last year, you've probably had somebody ask you to get a warranty on whatever video game you're buying, which is anywhere between $1 and $3, depending on the price of the game. And this can be annoying. If you're a typical customer, that takes care of your shit, you're not going to care about that. And it's as simple as telling them, no thank you, I just want to buy my game. And most times, that's the end of it. However, there are stores out there, there are districts out there that do this practice where they will just add it onto your thing and not say a word, and you will unknowingly pay that charge for the warranty. And the unfortunate part about this is there are district managers at this company that support that shitty practice, and I've seen it happen to people. Now, thankfully, the store that I worked at did not partake in this practice. I never had anybody in this district or district manager say that I had to do this. There was what was considered the assumptive approach, which is you would add it to the transaction and then tell the customer, hey, this is what the price of this is going to be if you buy the warranty. But that just seemed counterintuitive to what you were trying to do, so I never did that personally. And it seemed shady. So that's a big part of it. Now, the Circle of Life gets, most of the news these days because it led to that line, as we just described, in GameStop. And the point of the Circle of Life is something that's always existed at GameStop. And now the term Circle of Life is being associated with a grading scale that each employee has. And that's not what the Circle of Life is. It's just that's the term that they used internally. The Circle of Life, it's a very simple process. It's basically a circle, and it has 4 bullet points, and in the center is what's known as the Power Up Rewards program. So you have trades, you have new releases, you have pre-owned, you have reserves. And those are the 4 things that keep the circle moving. So for example, let's say little Timmy comes in and he trades in his games towards reserving a new game. And then he comes in and he picks up that new game. Let's say when he comes in and he picks up that new game, he buys something that's pre-owned, and the circle keeps going, and in the center of it is the Power Up Rewards program. Now, if we're going to be honest, the PowerUp Rewards program is outdated and it's kind of shitty these days. You have Best Buy has the Gamers Club Unlock program that frankly shits all over GameStop, but what kids don't understand on the internet is that Best Buy has the ability to create that program because they can take the hit on making new games cheaper, because they're going to go off and they're going to sell a bunch of TVs that cost way much more money and have a way bigger return on them than selling, you know, a bunch of video games. And if you've walked into a Best Buy recently, you've probably noticed that their video game section has shrank considerably. However, I will give you, and Best Buy has a much better rewards program right now than GameStop, and that is a true statement, but they can afford to do that. GameStop can't afford to do that. GameStop primarily focuses on video games. Now they're kind of jumping into the collectibles side of things. You know, they bought the company ThinkGeek, and there's a lot of stores that are turning into what's known as a 50-50 store. So half the store is video game focused, the other half of it is collectible focused. They were kind of doing this with the store that I worked in before I left, and it's fine. Like, I was never upset about the collectible aspect of things. I thought that it was fine. You know, a lot of it is pop vinyls. Pop vinyls are incredibly huge right now, as you can see above me. I kind of went a little pop vinyl crazy at a certain point until I just was like, I woke up one day, I realized I had like 70 of them, and I was like, what the hell am I doing? It slowed down considerably on buying those. You know, those are very successful for GameStop. Collectibles thing is very successful for GameStop. They're selling a lot of that stuff. Now you can argue a lot of it is crap, and it totally is, but it's working to an extent for them, but it's still a massively sinking ship. And you have so many things going wrong for it. So last summer, one of the worst things that I saw in the 4 years that I worked at GameStop was internally GameStop employees use a thing that is called GSO. I forget what it stands for, but it is an online program essentially that gives you not only the facts and information that you need, but it also gives you information on how to set up different planograms. Like, it is a total service that, as an employee that's a key holder, you need this service. So one of the heads of GameStop, I'm not going to mention directly, got through their head last year. They walked into some store in Timbuktu and they saw an employee standing behind the counter with a line of a bunch of people, not helping them, but instead sitting on this program. And this is how the story goes. And this guy became so furious that this person was sitting on this GSO program and not out on the floor talking to customers, that they came up with this whole GSO takedown initiative. So what they did was, one morning, everybody that was opening for that day went into their local GameStop that they worked at. They turned on their computers, did all the boot up process, went to GSO, and were greeted with a message that simply just stated that GSO was taken down for an emergency and would be brought back up after you would communicate the pre-owned value message, and you needed to contact your district manager for more details. Now, I can tell you, in this district that I worked in, only about 3 people contacted our district manager, and he was really pissed about it. And it's because most people had a level head. They saw it and they knew that this was a joke. They took this program, and again, this is a vital program that we needed as employees. They took this down for over a month. And then the message was the 1020 pre-owned. So what they did is, and this is one of the worst, this is one of the worst things I saw while I worked at GameStop. Through this process, they decided every pre-owned games need to be 10% off or 20% off if you have the PowerUp Rewards card. So over the process of 2 weeks, they price changed every game in the company that is pre-owned to be exactly 10% off or 20% off, and then they expected every employee to go around to every person that walked through the door with the following message: hey, how are you today? I just wanted to let you know that all the games are 10% off if they're pre-owned, or 20% if you have a PowerUp Rewards membership with us. That makes it sound like there's a sale going on, but guess what? There's no sale going on right now. And that drove me nuts. Honestly, I didn't really do it because I thought it was stupid, and a lot of people didn't. It just feels like a company where somebody is sitting in a room and they're just throwing shit at a wall hoping something will stick. And it's a company that constantly, from the internal standpoint, constantly changes their focus, so they never have a central focus. So you'll have a part of the year where they are incredibly focused on trades. Trades are the message. You have to talk to everybody about trades. There were times where I was told by a district manager, and I had a really shitty one, and I was told by a district manager that every single person that came through the door as they left, I was supposed to hand them an additional bag and tell them, hey, go home, take this bag, fill it up with trades, and bring it back. Why would I do that? Anytime I ever said that to somebody, they just looked at me like I was an idiot. So, like, why would I do that? There was a brief period of time where GameStop got into, and again, I'm going through just the 4 years that I was there, and, you know, so I can only talk about recent things. GameStop got into the whole iDevice scenario. So you can go into a GameStop, you can trade in most iDevices. Now, obviously, earlier iPhones and iPads aren't acceptable anymore, or iPods, only, you know, more current versions are. And when they first started this business, they took things in at way too high of a value, and then they weren't making enough profit on it, and it lost the company a considerable amount of money. So that's why the values on a lot of that stuff tanked, and then you have angry customers who are like, well, this iPhone's worth like $600 and you're only gonna give me $70 for it. Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. From that standpoint, that was another poor business decision on GameStop's, you know, behalf. And they've made a lot of poor business decisions, but that was a bad one. The Circle of Life fiasco led through a lot of firings and a lot of people leaving the company. And honestly, that's not why I left. The reason I left was I just got a different job. Isn't in retail. That's the reason I left. And, you know, it's just, it was time. Honestly, like, it's a sinking ship, man. Like, GameStop probably isn't going to exist in 5 years. And I used to argue it all the time, like, no, they'll be around a little bit longer, but they really aren't going to be. Like, I predict when we get to February, March of next year, you're gonna see a lot of GameStops closing. Last year, it was like 150 stores closed. You're gonna see double, triple that next year, because I just don't think they're going to have a good holiday season. And now, most recently, and another reason why I'm really happy that I left the company is, you know, they used to tout all the time, we have these two holidays that every employee's off and they're home with their families every year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, every year. And then GameStop decided, you know, a week ago, wow, our last couple Black Fridays have been really bad. You know, and it can't be that, you know, our deals are just shitty every year. It must be that everybody else is going out and shopping at other retailers on Thanksgiving, so we just need to be open on Thanksgiving now. After you've touted for the last several years that you're proud that you don't force your employees to work on Thanksgiving, now you're forcing your employees to work on Thanksgiving. You're taking one of the only 2 days that this company is closed away from your employees who are already shittily paid for what they do. And now you're taking one of those 2 days away. That is incredibly, incredibly garbage of you to do. It's just awful. And I feel for some of my friends that still work for the company, because that's bad. And what's next? Are they just, at this point, are they gonna just be open on Christmas Day? Because it's probably gonna happen. So that's a bad standpoint. Ranted about my side of things when I worked at GameStop, in terms of the company, in terms of some of the shitty internal things. Let's talk about some of the bad parts on the other side of GameStop. Let's talk about some of the customer interactions. I cannot stress enough that GameStop, out of all the retail jobs I worked in, I don't work in retail anymore for a reason. Retail is a terrible industry to work in, because every side of it is bad, but the customers are some of the worst customers you will ever deal with. Now, thankfully, I would argue that the customers I dealt with at GameStop weren't of the worst customers I ever dealt with at a retail job. There's a specific company I worked for prior that had a worse customer base, but you will deal with some of the most garbage people you will ever see in your life. You will see grown men act like children. You will see people try to cheat you all the time. You will see, and this is one thing I can't stress enough, GameStop is probably the biggest legal offense of stolen goods in the United States. I can't factually back that up, but I can tell you from working on the other side of it, GameStop takes a lot of stolen merchandise in for sale. You can move it up the ladder and you can tell, you know, loss prevention, you can tell those people, but it's turned to a blind eye because in the reality of it is GameStop's just about making money, and they look at that and go, yeah, cool, that guy probably just went to Walmart, ripped off 10 copies of, let's say, Plants vs. Zombies 2, and they brought them here. We could report that, or we could just not. We can sell that and make money. And that's what they do. And so you're told constantly, just go ahead and do it. And it's whatever. Now, you can get banned from GameStop for doing nefarious stuff, trading a bunch of stolen merchandise in, and that's sure. I've seen it in the 4 years I've been there. I saw it probably a dozen times. People legitimately getting trade banned. It does happen. There are people out there that are scumbags, and they will eventually get caught, but it takes a lot. You have to do a lot to get trade banned at GameStop. It isn't just, hey, I went in and I traded in. Like, you have to trade in. I don't know what the set amount is because I didn't work in loss prevention, but it is a lot. So when you ever see that, you know, like, this person's done a lot of nefarious shit to get caught. I mean, man, I've been yelled at, I've been screamed at, I've been cursed at, I've been threatened. In the last week that I worked there, I had some guy threaten to rearrange my jaw. You know, like, it's just video game retail. That's all it should be. But people are just such babies. Grown men acting like children. It's nuts. It really is. And you see it and you become disgusted. You start to begin to hate more people. And it's not a way to live, man. And it drags you down emotionally and it drags you down physically too. And the pay that you make in retail, especially GameStop, does not compensate you well enough for the garbage that you have to deal with on a regular basis. So, and that was one of the reasons I left, at some point you just have to say enough is enough, man. Like, I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of seeing garbage people. I'm tired of seeing people treat their children like garbage. You know, it's just, man, it's crazy. And just, that's another side of it. So don't think that you walk into GameStop, you know, and let's say you walk into GameStop and you're one of the good customers and, you know, you go in there and you're going to be angry about stuff, and I get it, but like, give GameStop employees a break. Most of them are overworked and underpaid, and a lot of them are genuinely decent people. Now, you might have, you might have a typical asshole that works at your local GameStop. That's going to happen everywhere, but thankfully at the location that I worked at for 4 years, I always worked with a pretty good team of people that got along with each other for the most part. I can't stress enough, and if you're a teen kid out there and you're watching this video, and you're just like, oh, I can't wait to turn 16, or I think it's 18 now, and go work at GameStop. Don't work at GameStop. Go find any other retail job. Go work at Target. Go work at Walmart. Go work at Best Buy. Do not work at GameStop. It'll break you apart, man. It's not worth your time. They're going to pay you like shit, and they're going to expect way too much out of you. I guess to wrap up this rant on GameStop, and I can't stress enough, like, I don't hate GameStop. I'm pained. As someone who grew up a child who loved GameStop and who shopped there all the time back in the Funko-Land days, the better days, you know, I was fortunate enough to work at the store that I grew up shopping at, and that was fun for a while. But it pains me to sit on the other side of this camera now and talk about GameStop and tell you guys, like, it's not a good place, but I have to tell the truth, and it's not. It really isn't a good place anymore. It's not a relevant place to buy video games from anymore, and I hate to say that because I don't think everything about GameStop is bad. They occasionally have good trade promotions, and they occasionally do some cool things, but in 2017, when you got Amazon and Best Buy offering better discounts on video games, you know, that discount is better than the employee discount I got working there, and that's just a slap to the face as a former employee. You know, like, that's a slap to the face. In closing here, I'll share one of my favorite memory stories of GameStop while I was working there in terms of just shitty customers, to give you kind of an idea of some of the bullshit that I had to deal with while I worked at GameStop. So, I can name any names or anything like that because that's not the point of this video, but we had a kid come in. He would come in all the time. He's a real piece of shit kid. He came from a garbage family who they were all terrible people. And it was a Sunday. He came in. He bought a couple of games. And maybe an hour or so later, phone rang from the district manager, talked to the person that was there at the time. I was not working this day. I only saw the other end of this story that I'm telling, but this is the beginning of the story. And he said, hey, you know, this kid was in earlier today. He bought a couple PS3 games, and one of the game cases had inappropriate content in it, so nobody's in trouble or anything like that, but we're going to have to give them an apology. We're going to have them sign some documents and that kind of stuff. Just giving you a heads up, so make sure you're checking the cases and stuff for all that. So, and this was probably within the first 6 months that I worked there. So, this piece of shit kid claimed that he had bought a copy of Tomb Raider for PS3. And he claimed that he found a porno disc, a disc of pornography, in the case with the game. Which I know for a fact isn't possible, because you can tell the weight of a game pretty easily if there's something else in that game. You can tell very easily. I don't know why I grabbed Splatterhouse, but that was the game I grabbed. So what we had to do as a company is we had to have these people sign a waiver so that they wouldn't sue. And then they got, I believe, up to $500 of GameStop money to buy whatever they wanted. And at the time, they bought a pre-owned Xbox 360 and some games and Xbox Live time and currency and that kind of stuff. And fine, whatever. And it was a shitty situation. And I knew deep down, like, there's no way that this is real. They just pulled a fast one. A week later, the same family comes in with all of this merchandise, want to trade it in for cash. The mother looks at me disgusted when I tell them they're only going to get about $48 cash for all this stuff. And she bitches up and down at me, and I literally look at her and I say, "You got all of this for free. You didn't pay anything for this. I'm giving you $48 more for something that we already gave you as an agreement for something else. And you want to complain about that? Oh well." Then the kid said something to me that I'll never forget, and keep in mind this kid at the time is about 10, 11 years old. And he says to his mother, and he directs it at me, "Well, we could probably go to the pawn shop down the street and get more." And I just look, like in the back of my mind, I'm just screaming at myself, this kid is 11. 11 years old! And he's talking about pawn shops! What? I didn't know what a pawn shop was when I was 11 years old. This kid knows about pawn shops. Like, what? Insane. And for the next 4 years as I worked there, I had to deal with these people on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And for a long time, every time that kid would come in and buy something, I would take the case, I would put the game in it, I would literally look under the manual like so, and I would do one of these, and I'd look at the kid dead in the eye and go, "Looks good to me." And I did that every time. Awful, awful people. Just, man. It's kind of funny too, because anytime this family will call the store now, like towards the end, the store that I worked in had caller ID. Anytime they would call, I just wouldn't answer, because like I just don't want to deal with them. It's kind of my rant about GameStop. They're not a good company. They're a terrible company to work for. They don't care about their employees. Don't let anyone that works there fool you. They're not good to their employees, and it's just not a good situation for anyone to be involved in. If you're a current employee of GameStop, I feel bad for you, man. I hope you have a good Thanksgiving, because like, oh man, I don't even know where to begin on that one. So leave a comment down below if you like this video. It wasn't as ranty as, say, the Super Nintendo video that I did, but I wanted to talk about GameStop and get some of my story of GameStop out, and kind of my feelings on GameStop now, being a recent former employee, and what I thought of GameStop and that kind of stuff out there. And obviously, if you've been watching this channel for any period of time, you know that I must have worked somewhere, because I have all these games and everything. So, that's my story about GameStop. I'm not trying to rag on them too hard here, but I think it's important to talk about these things, and being that my channel is primarily based around video games, GameStop is a huge company, and a lot of people out there do shop at GameStop. And I'm not saying necessarily that if you shop at GameStop now, you should stop or anything like that, but I just think there are better deals out there and better places to buy video games in 2017 than GameStop. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And anyways, until next time.